I wasn't the kind of bride anyone expected. My name is Leah Morgan, and though I carried $1 million fortune in my own name, I walked into my marriage pretending to be ordinary. I wore plain clothes, never spoke about money, and lived quietly. My husband's family believed I came from nothing, and I never corrected them. Why hide it? Because I wanted love, not a relationship bought with wealth. I wanted to know who accepted me without gold or diamonds. At first, it felt safe, even comforting. But the more I blended in, the more my mother-in-law, Victoria, sharpened her eyes on me. She called me too simple, unfit, and whispered that I was chasing her son for money. She didn't know the truth, that I was richer than her entire family combined. And one day, she would regret trying to expose me. If you like our revenge stories, please subscribe for more. We drop powerful news stories every week, filled with truth, emotion, and justice. Don't miss the next one. And remember, some stories hurt, but they heal too. Subscribe now, and join the journey. From the very first day I met Victoria, her eyes pierced me like knives. She shook my hand lightly, almost like touching me was an insult. "So, this is the girl," she said, raising one brow. The way she spoke made it sound less like a greeting and more like a warning. She wore pearls and a designer dress, the kind that silently shouted her wealth. Compared to her, I looked almost invisible in my simple skirt and shoes. She liked it that way. Her smile at her friends' faces quickly turned into frowns whenever her eyes landed back on me. My husband tried to distract me, whispering, "Don't mind her, she'll warm up." But he didn't notice how tightly Victoria's lips pressed together. She had already decided who I was. That night, as I lay awake, I realized something chilling. Victoria wasn't planning to accept me. I tried to fit into their world. At family dinners, I laughed when everyone else laughed, even if the jokes cut a little too deep. I wore dresses I found on sale, never flashy, always safe. When the others compared vacations, I stayed silent, saying we preferred quiet weekends. Victoria noticed every detail. She leaned close once and said softly, "Some women know how to carry themselves. Others, try." I swallowed hard, pretending not to hear. My husband kept eating, pretending not to notice. I told myself patience was key. If I stayed calm and humble, maybe she would accept me. But no matter how hard I tried, her eyes stayed sharp, waiting for me to slip. Every smile I gave felt heavy, every compliment she offered came with a hidden sting. I belonged to their family on paper, but in her heart, I was always an outsider. The attacks never came loudly. Victoria was too clever for that. At brunch, she'd look at my plain shoes and laugh lightly. "How sweet, Leah still shops like a college girl." At parties, she'd introduce me as the simple wife, her smile dripping with poison. Other guests would giggle, not realizing her words were blades. I'd force a smile, my cheeks burning, while my husband shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. His silence cut deeper than her insults. One evening, she handed me a cookbook. Every wife should learn at least one useful skill. My hands trembled, but I nodded politely. In private, I cried into my pillow. But each tear fueled a growing fire. I reminded myself daily, I was stronger than she knew. She thought I was powerless. What she didn't know was that I held a secret bigger than her entire world. If you like our revenge stories, please subscribe for more. We drop powerful news stories every week, filled with truth, emotion, and justice. Don't miss the next one. And remember, some stories hurt, but they heal too. Subscribe now, and join the journey. One night, after another humiliating dinner, I slipped into the bathroom and locked the door. The mirror showed a brave face crumbling under pressure. I pressed my hands to the sink, whispering, "Why am I letting her do this to me?" I thought of my father, who built a fortune from nothing. His last words echoed, "Strength isn't loud, Leah. It's quiet and steady." That's why I never told anyone about my wealth. I wanted love built on trust, not numbers. But Victoria's cruelty was chipping at my patience. Every insult, every smirk, every dismissal was a test. Tears slid down my cheeks, but by the time I unlocked the door, I had made a promise to myself. I would endure, for now. But if Victoria pushed me too far, I would show her exactly who I was. And she would never recover from it. Victoria's favorite stage was the dining table. One evening, she leaned across the silverware and asked me, "Leah, remind us, what did your parents do?" "Factory workers, wasn't it?" Her voice carried, drawing polite laughs. I froze. My husband's fork paused midair, but he said nothing. My cheeks burned. "They worked hard," I answered softly, forcing a smile. Victoria smirked, satisfied. "Hard work is admirable. But some people climb ladders they don't belong on." The room grew quiet. My heart thumped loudly, echoing in my ears. I sipped water, hiding my trembling hands. She had struck again, making me feel like a stranger in my own family. That night, I whispered to myself in bed, "One day, she'll regret these words." For now, I swallowed the pain, but deep inside, my silence was becoming sharper than any blade she could throw. It didn't take long for whispers to spread beyond the family. At a charity brunch, Victoria pulled aside two of her friends, lowering her voice just enough for me to hear. "She's charming, yes, but clearly chasing security. Girls like her never have much. My son deserves more." The women nodded, glancing at me with pity disguised as kindness. My stomach turned. Each laugh felt like a dagger. Later, one woman asked me, "Leah, it must be wonderful living in such comfort. I suppose it's very different from where you came from?" I smiled faintly, hiding my anger. They believed Victoria's story. She had painted me as a beggar who stumbled into luck. I walked away that afternoon with a smile still plastered on my face. Inside, I was crumbling. If only they knew the truth, that I was the one carrying power they couldn't even imagine. I thought my husband would protect me. Instead, he stayed quiet, pretending not to notice. At another dinner, Victoria scoffed at my plain dress. "We'll have to take Leah shopping one day. Bless her heart, she's doing her best." Everyone chuckled. I glanced at him, praying for defense. But he simply lowered his head, sipping his wine. The silence crushed me more than her words. His loyalty seemed to sway under his mother's shadow. I wanted to scream, to stand up, to reveal everything. But I didn't. That night, I asked, "Why don't you speak up?" He sighed. "She'll come around. Don't make it worse." I turned away, heartbreaking. He didn't understand. I wasn't weak. I was patient. But my patience was being tested, and one day, his silence would cost him more than he ever imagined. When Victoria planned the charity gala, she smiled sweetly and said, "Leah, you'll come, won't you? Everyone will be there." I nodded, though something in her eyes warned me. Weeks later, I overheard her on the phone, her voice sharp. "We'll expose her then. People need to know what kind of girl my son married." My heart pounded. Expose me? What lies had she prepared? What tricks was she planning? That evening, I sat in silence at dinner, watching her grin at her friends. She looked like a queen arranging a performance, and I was the target. For the first time, my fear began to fade. If she wanted a war, she would have it. But she had no idea what weapon I carried. Her stage would become mine. Victoria thought she was setting a trap. She didn't know she was walking into one. After hearing Victoria's plan, I shut myself in my room. My chest ached with the weight of betrayal. She wasn't just gossiping anymore, she was preparing to destroy me in front of everyone. I cried until no tears were left. Then I sat in silence, staring at my reflection. My father's words echoed again, "Strength isn't loud, Leah. It's steady." I realized I had been too quiet, too patient. Victoria mistook silence for weakness. She thought I had nothing to fight with. That night, something inside me shifted. I wiped my face, stood tall, and whispered, "Enough." If she wanted to see me broken, she would be disappointed. If she wanted to humiliate me publicly, she would end up humiliating herself. The battle was no longer about fitting in. It was about survival and victory. And I was ready for war. Hidden in my old apartment was a small vault only I knew about. Inside were documents, bank statements, property deeds, and investment papers worth millions. My father had left me not just money, but an empire built from years of sacrifice. I sat on the floor, flipping through the folders, my fingers brushing the weight of power. This was my shield. This was my sword. Victoria believed I was powerless, but these papers proved otherwise. She thought I was chasing security, when in truth, I had more than her entire family combined. I locked the vault again, whispering to myself, "You wanted to expose me, Victoria. But when I step forward, it won't be the story you expect." For the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt steady, ready. The game had changed, and now, I was preparing for the moment she least expected. I couldn't fight this battle alone. So I called Sophia, my best friend since childhood. She had always known the truth and guarded my secret like her own. When I told her what Victoria planned, Sophia slammed her hand on the table. "Enough is enough, Leah. You've been patient long enough. It's time she learns who she's dealing with." Her words gave me strength. Together, we mapped out everything. The gala would be Victoria's stage, but I would turn it into mine. Sophia promised to gather witnesses, people who could verify every detail of my inheritance. If she dares to speak, we'll drown her in truth. I hugged her tightly. "Thank you. I can't do this without you." She smiled. "You won't have to. This time, Leah, the whole world will see you for who you truly are." The days leading to the gala felt like preparing for battle. I chose my outfits carefully, still dressing simple so Victoria wouldn't suspect a thing. Meanwhile, Sophia helped me collect documents, notarized statements, and even a banker ready to attend if needed. My fortune was no longer just a secret, it was evidence strong enough to silence any rumor. At night, I replayed everything in my head. Victoria would attack, but I would strike back at the perfect moment. When my husband asked if I was nervous, I simply smiled. Not at all. He thought I was lying, but the truth was different. I wasn't nervous, I was waiting. The gala wasn't just another event. It was the moment the curtain would rise, the actors would take their places, and the truth would finally step into the light. The morning of the gala, I stood before the mirror. My dress was simple, elegant, nothing too grand. I wanted Victoria to underestimate me one last time. When she saw me arrive, she smirked, whispering to her friends. Still dressing like she belongs in the bargain aisle. I pretended not to hear, but inside, I smiled. The mask of silence had protected me this long, and tonight, it would lead her straight into her own downfall. I greeted guests politely, never drawing attention. I blended in, the way I always had. Victoria believed I was cornered, but really, she was. As the music played and champagne glasses clinked, I waited for her to make her move. Every second brought me closer to the moment she'd regret underestimating me. The stage was hers, for now. But when the curtain fell, the story would belong to me. As the evening unfolded, small signs began to appear. Victoria, too confident, made slip after slip. She bragged loudly about her family's influence, ignoring the raised eyebrows of guests tired of her arrogance. When she insulted another woman's dress, people shifted uncomfortably. Even my husband whispered, "Mother, not tonight." But she waved him off. Each misstep was a brick in the wall she was building around herself. I didn't need to attack yet, she was doing the work for me. Sophia caught my eye from across the room, giving a small nod. Everything was ready. The banker had arrived quietly, documents in hand, waiting for my signal. Victoria believed she was untouchable. She had no idea the ground beneath her was cracking. I took a slow breath, smiling faintly. Tonight, the first cracks would become an earthquake she'd never forget. The gala shimmered with chandeliers, silk gowns, and polite laughter. Waiters carried trays of champagne while music floated through the air. Guests admired Victoria as she strutted across the floor, glowing with confidence. I stayed near the edges, greeting people warmly, blending into the background as always. My simple dress didn't draw eyes, and that was exactly what I wanted. Victoria had worked hard for this moment. Every detail of the event was designed to highlight her as the perfect hostess. But her real performance was still waiting in the shadows, me. As I watched her laugh with her friends, I felt strangely calm. The nerves were gone. I wasn't the shy bride anymore. I was steady, patient, and ready. Victoria thought she owned the stage tonight. What she didn't realize was that the curtain would fall with her name, not mine, in ruins. When the music lowered and the speeches began, Victoria seized her chance. She raised her glass, smiling sweetly. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. But before we celebrate further, I feel it's my duty to address something. The room hushed. My chest tightened, though I forced a calm smile. Victoria turned to me, her voice dripping with false pity. Our Leah is charming, yes. But not everyone knows her background. She came from nothing. She has no career, no fortune, nothing of her own. My son has carried her. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My face burned, though I kept my composure. She believed she had cornered me, humiliating me in front of everyone. But instead of crumbling, I lifted my chin. Inside, I whispered, "Thank you, Victoria. You've given me the perfect opening." The trap was finally closing, on her. The silence after Victoria's words stretched long and heavy. Eyes turned toward me, waiting for a reaction. My husband shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. I took a step forward, my voice calm and steady. "It's true," I said softly. "I never told you all much about myself. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted to see who valued me beyond appearances." Victoria smirked, believing she'd won. But then I turned to the banker standing quietly in the corner. "Would you?" I asked. He stepped forward, opening a folder filled with documents. His voice was clear. "Leah Morgan is the heir of the Morgan Trust, with assets surpassing 90 million. These papers verify property, investments, and accounts under her name alone." Gasps filled the room again, but this time, they weren't at me. They were at Victoria. Her smile vanished. I stood taller, my voice no longer trembling. "You called me ordinary, Victoria. But I never needed your approval. I hid my truth because I wanted to see who judged me without wealth. Tonight, I have my answer." The crowd buzzed with whispers. Guests who once pitied me now looked at me with awe. Some even exchanged sharp glances at Victoria, their admiration for her crumbling fast. My husband's face turned pale, his mouth opening then closing again. He had no words. Victoria, meanwhile, froze, her glass shaking in her hand. For the first time, her confidence cracked. I lifted my chin higher. "You wanted to expose me. But in the end, you only exposed yourself." The applause began slowly, then grew louder. For once, the room wasn't hers, it was mine. And Victoria had nowhere left to hide. For a moment, the gala froze in absolute silence. All eyes darted between me and Victoria. The woman who once commanded every room now stood trembling, unable to speak. I let the silence stretch, heavy and sharp. Then I smiled. I played ordinary because I wanted to see who truly valued me. I found loyalty in some, and betrayal in others. The words hung in the air, aimed directly at her. Guests shifted uncomfortably, whispering behind their hands. The humiliation she had prepared for me had backfired, tenfold. Victoria opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her face flushed red, and her hands clenched at her sides. I walked back into the crowd, calm and composed, while Sophia squeezed my hand. The power shift was complete. Victoria had wanted a show. Tonight, she became the star, but not in the way she dreamed. After the gala, my husband followed me home in silence. His face was pale, his eyes searching mine. Finally, he whispered, "Why didn't you tell me?" I turned to him, calm but firm. "Because I wanted to see where your loyalty lay. You chose silence. You let her humiliate me while I suffered alone." He lowered his head, guilt written across his face. "I thought keeping peace was better." "Peace?" I said bitterly. "You watched me drown while calling it peace." His regret was clear, but it was too late. My trust was already broken. He was no longer the partner I thought he was. That night, as he sat in silence, I realized something. My marriage had been built on illusions. Victoria wasn't the only one who underestimated me. My husband did too, and he would never make that mistake again. News of the gala spread quickly. Guests retold the story, each version sharper than the last. Soon, Victoria's reputation was in ruins. The woman who once carried herself like royalty was now mocked for her arrogance. Her friends stopped returning her calls. At luncheons, people whispered about how she'd humiliated herself. Even business partners distanced themselves, no longer impressed by her supposed influence. I watched quietly as her empire of pride crumbled. She had built her power on fear and status, but once stripped, she had nothing left. At home, she avoided my eyes, bitterness etched on her face. She had wanted to expose me. Instead, she had exposed her own cruelty to the entire city. It wasn't revenge delivered by my hands alone, it was justice delivered by truth. And the truth was far louder than any insult she had ever thrown at me. For the first time in months, I walked through the Morgan estate with my head held high. Servants smiled at me warmly. Guests addressed me with respect. No one dared whisper behind my back anymore. Victoria, once so loud, now kept her distance. Every glare she sent my way only reminded others of her downfall. She had lost the war she started. My husband tried to repair what was broken, offering flowers and apologies. But trust, once shattered, doesn't return so easily. I smiled politely, but inside, I knew the truth. I didn't need him. I never did. The power she tried to strip from me was mine all along. Now, the entire family, and beyond, knew it. Victory wasn't just about proving her wrong. It was about proving myself right. I had endured, I had risen, and now, I stood untouchable. I didn't waste my fortune on petty revenge. Instead, I invested in schools, charities, and businesses that supported women like me, women underestimated, ignored, and silenced. Every donation carried my name, and every headline reminded Victoria of the woman she. The same guests who once pitted me now sought my advice. The shift was undeniable. I was no longer the quiet wife. I was Leah Morgan, the woman who turned betrayal into triumph. Victoria could no longer touch me. Her words held no power, her influence no reach. I had rewritten the story. And now, every chapter belonged to me. Standing before a crowd at another grand event, I looked out at the faces watching me. My voice carried with calm certainty. I once pretended to be ordinary, not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted to see who valued me without wealth. What I learned was painful, but it also set me free. People listened intently, their eyes wide. My story is proof that silence doesn't mean weakness. Patience doesn't mean surrender. And underestimation is the sharpest fuel for victory. The applause rose, filling the hall with thunder. I smiled faintly, my eyes meeting Victoria's in the corner. She couldn't meet my gaze. Justice wasn't loud or cruel, it was simple. I had endured, I had risen, and now, I was unshakable. The ordinary bride was gone. In her place stood a woman extraordinary, and unforgettable. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what part hit you the hardest. Thanks for watching.